A2theK. Hello, welcome to the A2theK Wrestling Show, where we are going to be doing the roster review, WWE versus AEW. So, in light of the recent WWE draft and how underwhelmed we were by the result of that and the kind of rosters we ended up with at the end, we decided we wanted to take a look at the current WWE and AEW rosters and basically analyse the current state of talent in both companies. So, because we were so underwhelmed, I think it begged the question of, have AEW overtaken WWE now in terms of the talent roster? Like, we know they've probably got more, but are they better?
And I think it's probably clear to point out we're not including the different branches of NXT in this.
No. So what we've done, we've looked at all the talent on Raw, all the talent on SmackDown, and we're comparing that against all the AEW talents, just because there's no separate brand split or anything like that. So NXT is excluded from this.
As is the likes of UK and stuff like that as well.
Yes. So literally just Raw and SmackDown from the main brands against the AEW roster. But yeah, we basically discussed how could we do this? How could we fairly compare the talent from both companies? So we decided to make it as a bit of a tier list. So the plan and what we've done is we ranked all of the roster from F to D to C to B to A and to S, the S tier talent. And basically we did that, compared them, and what we plan to do is to take you through our perhaps controversial opinions on where these the talent has ended up.
Yeah, I mean, before we do anything, I want to say is because a lot of the controversy will probably come from people going, well, WWE is better because of blah, blah, blah. Right, the one thing I don't want to do, we are comparing them. Yeah, that's fine, right? And I'm all for that comparison. What I don't want to do is have the thing of going, well, yeah, he's good, but if he was in WWE, he wouldn't be on the same tier. And so, like, we don't care. We're talking about how they're doing it in their respective companies.
Yeah,
I want to make that very clear right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had a message on Instagram before, because obviously we posted these tier lists for you to check out ahead of us even recording this, because we're nice like that. But one of the messages that we had was like, how have we decided on these, and you know, what have we taken into account?
Which is a fair question. Yeah,
exactly. And we were like, we just picked who we liked.
What we wanted to.
But I think, you know, to your point, Anthony, it's not like going, well, let's put these on, you know, oh, if they were in WWE or they were in AEW, how would it? It's literally, this is the AEW talent and where they sit on the tier in AEW, and then this is the WWE talent, this is where they sit on the tier there, taking into account their characters, you know, their look, their in-ring work, you know, their whole package, basically. So we looked at all their packages.
Bring maturity into this.
Yeah. Yeah, without further ado,
we're trying to decide who's got the biggest package. And we'll tell you.
We're gonna talk about who's got some S tier package right here. But
and the S stands for no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so let's start off with the F tier package.
Okay.
The smaller.
Well, straight away, Carl. I think what was interesting is that there is more. I was going to give the excuse to WWE that like they have a bigger roster, but when you pull the NXT elements out of it, they don't. And I would say there's more current F tier talent than AEW has, which is very interesting to me. Not surprising to say the least. And to be honest, like just I don't know if you want to list them out, Carl, but even I think we probably disagreed with particularly one of the F tiers in AEW, and that was Luther. I was trying to rate him a bit higher just for his legend status, and I think he's ended up in F because you need to look at, again, the current status in the current show that they're on in the respective promotion. And on that basis, you have to say F, but like I was almost debating the Luther element of it as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, we'll caveat all of the choices we've made with none of them were super easy choices. Do you know what I mean? Like there was a lot of debating. Obviously, Anthony rated his separately, I rated mine separately, and we kind of found a middle ground for this particular show. But I think you know it's an interesting one. The fact that obviously when we did the counts, I think there was quite a fair few more, maybe like 20 or so, potentially more people from the AEW side of things than there was WWE. But it's surprising that more of the WWE talent has ended up being rated as F tier by us. And some of these, so obviously you look at the likes of Top Dollar and B-Fab and people like that.
I do want to give a bit of credit to them that they've literally only just turned up on these shows, so they've not really ingratiated themselves. So they might not be F tier very long. It's just purely because of the situation, I suppose, for them.
Well, that's it. And this is, with any wrestling, it's not set in stone. It's not like, Shane Dawn's an F tier and that's it. He's done. If he gets repackaged as something other than bloody Flapjack. Well, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, he's just
totally forgot about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I wonder why. But yeah, and obviously Reggie, for example, some people love him.
Well, Reggie's never leaving F tier.
I can't fucking stand the guy. Just does flips and that. Not for me. And even Marie, just another one to call out of. I was so underwhelmed by the fact she came back and just didn't show any signs of improvement whatsoever. I don't know why she's there. And Dana Brooke, and I feel bad sticking her on the F tier list because she's getting a lot of flack at the minute, especially from, she's being buried on TV by, Corey Graves and stuff. So,
well, I mean, you say that. I think I actually kind of agree with someone defending this point that like Corey Graves was getting a bit of shit for that, but he's meant to be a colour commentator, so he's meant to not like her. So I think it was probably more lacking the who's Corey Graves announced with these days. I can't even remember.
I don't know. Michael Cole.
But it's more the lack of support from the other side. Corey's meant to be giving a shit, but there was nothing else. It was just like, you're totally right, Corey. Let's carry on.
I concur.
So I think that was kind of the problem more than Corey.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And then also from the AEW side, obviously, Michael Nakazawa, we know he's had a very good career and stuff like that, but he is just a silly joke comedy character in AEW, so he can't get any higher than an F. He's awful in AEW.
He's the Reggie.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the same for Leva Bates. Obviously, it's she's a librarian, and that's a cool gimmick for the wrestling world, but just don't see anything of her. So that's where the
screen time wise, you've got to put it in the F because
that's it. That's the way the cookies did crumble for the F tier. So moving swiftly on to the D tier. This was obviously more difficult again. So there's a lot more in both of these. Significantly more in AEW than there is in WWE in this instance, which is quite an interesting one. Is there anyone that kind of jumps out on either side? I think one for me.
I think we could probably... Sorry, go on, I'll let you do yours first.
Well, I was going to say one for me, which I think people might think is super controversial, is we've given R-Truth a D. And I love R-Truth, don't get me wrong. And there's no denying he's a proper ledge and he's been in the game for ages and stuff like that. But again, he is just a silly comedy gimmick. And
WWE break him out when they want a chuckle moment. That's what he's there for.
He's not even been funny lately either. Like he's got probably worse at this point than he was. Like his little Johnny stuff and things like that, and where he'd come down and like thinking that Paul Heyman was in the Royal Rumble or whatever, and it turned out to be Brock, and he threw himself. That kind of stuff. He used to get a chuckle, but now it's just a 24/7 title and Old Spice commercials and stuff, and it's just like, it's not for me.
Yeah. No, I think in terms of standing out, I think certain ones you kind of you notice a pattern with the D section that these are people who are sort of partnered with. Do you know what I mean? So you get like Commander Aziz is listed in there, and sort of even Dominic Mysterio on a level. It's like he's in the status he's in. He's on the screen time that he's got because of his dad. Aziz is there because of Apollo and so on like that. So for me, it's like it kind of makes sense with a lot of them, and like certain ones like Dominic Mysterio, we might get a little bit of grief for him being in the D. But when you consider like he's got a long career ahead of him, and right now by himself, that is exactly what he is.
Yeah, like, I think and I know we're putting a lot of focus on WWE. We will talk about AEW in a second, but when you look at this, it's very much a mix of people with potential who could go on to do something really good. Like Austin Theory's in there, Dominic Mysterio, as you said.
He's only just come back to the main roster, Austin, so like he has the time to put in, like, so yeah. Exactly. Like you say, these aren't fixed.
No,
they're not like.
But then you also you also, I mean, even like Mia Yim, like if she gets a chance, other than Reckoning,
we just haven't
that
seen
could be
it.
great. But conversely, you've also got people in here, the likes of Tamina, who they're just not going to get any better. Like
they put the years in, and
it's
it
just
is
where
what
they
it is.
are. You know what I mean? And Nia Jax potentially is another controversial one because she's very prominently featured, but I just don't rate her. I think she's
No. That one might be a little personal. To be honest, it's similar to like the likes of what's his name? It just escaped me. The likes of Eric and Ivar as examples. Like people might want to rate them higher, but it's hard to at the minute. Do you know what I mean? Like probably not for the same reasons as Nia, but you look at it and go, well, how can you justify anything more than that? And it is. I don't know. I'm looking at controversy. To be honest, I keep looking at Jackson Riker. That he probably should be in the F tier. If I'm honest with you, like.
Yeah, I know that was one that was debated. To be fair, quite heavily between us. I think the only reason they kind of swung him in that way is because, they did give him a bit of a push with the Elias thing. And who knows if they repackaged him right? He's obviously got the look and stuff as well, so he could be something, but he's just not a whole lot of anything interesting at the moment.
Yeah, and ears open that he isn't. But he's probably a similar thing to Nia, where he's been featured prominently, but it's just not working. And that's not Nia's probably had a longer time to make something work than he has, but like that you can, for me, you can get why they're in the position they are.
Yeah, no, I think so. And even from like an AEW standpoint as well, like there's a couple in here. Like I know there's a lot of Joey Janela fans, and that's cool. I get it. But again, I just feel like that's where his place is on. Yeah.
I think another one you'd notice as well is there's a fair few of the Dark Order members in here, and that's the ones that like are probably less prominent. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It makes sense that most of the Dark Order are in here because they are, all due respect, I love the Dark Order stuff, and I love, like, when last week they paid homage to Brody and they had all that segment with -1 and stuff. It's all ace stuff, but as far as they go, this is the most appropriate sort of place for them because they're not prominent enough. They're not involved in anything in the main stuff. They weren't there for a week or two. You wouldn't really miss them, in all honesty.
No.
That's not a bad thing. Like, they're still great, but that's kind of how they've ended up. Most of them have ended up in here.
Yeah, and I think there's other aspects of that as well. Like does any of us really see the likes of Alan Angels or whoever going on to win like a world title or being a main event star and stuff like that? Like as we said, we're trying to rate the whole kind of aspect of them, like how they are perceived on TV today. What their potential future ceiling is, and all that kind of good stuff.
Which obviously can always change, but we got to look at what you see for their future right now, and there's no hints of that kind of stuff for them, like you say.
Exactly, and it's very possible that if we ever did this again in the future, a lot of this could all change. They might finally give Austin Theory a decent push for once. Or the likes of T-Bar or Mansoor or Omos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's the thing. You just, I mean, Omos, I'd be quite surprised, but it's based on the game what we see at the minute. But again, you just never know. You never know what the future holds for these guys.
No,
similarly, we might, we could come and do this again next year, and Marco stunts in the A class. We just don't know.
Well, exactly. I mean, Brock Anderson's obviously very, very, much an up and comer at the moment. There's no saying that he won't go on to do some really good stuff. Brandy, she potentially is in a C territory, but I think the fact that she just hasn't been around for a bit, and some of the stuff she was involved with was a bit underwhelming.
Sadly, she's had a lot more misses than she's had hits.
Yeah.
With the Nightmare Collective, I can't remember what the fuck it was called now. And to be honest, she was probably the weaker part of her feud with was it Red Velvet? She had a feud before she went off, and I can't remember who it was now. I want to say it was Red Velvet.
I know she had. She was part of the Nightmare Sisters with Ali, wasn't she? And then they had a bit of a falling out because she got with QT and stuff.
Yeah. Oh god, I forgot I blocked all that out.
I mean,
that's another miss right there.
Yeah, I feel bad for Brandy, to be fair, because obviously the plan at the time was it was going to be. I mean, I don't feel bad. That sounds like a terrible thing to say because she went off to go and have a baby, which is the best thing anyone could do ever. But I mean, like, she was set up to obviously have Red Velvet spot in that match with Shaq and Jade Cargill, which I think no disrespect to Red Velvet either, but that could have potentially been meant more, just because it would have felt less like a random pairing of Red Velvet and Cody, and it would have felt like, husband and wife against, Shaq and Jade Cargill would have added something a bit more to it. But yeah, I think
I take your point there, yeah.
Obviously she's committed to getting back in the ring. She's had a baby now. She wants to get back in, and she does want to push towards a world championship one day. So let's see, if we ever do this again in the future, whether that work ends up paying off and she skyrockets up that list. But yeah, even stuff like Rebel, like I love Reba and Rebel. There's just like you got to look at the whole landscape, haven't you, where people are and stuff.
Yeah,
so
that's the thing.
Yeah. And Hook, obviously. Everybody loves Hook online, especially on Reddit.
Hook, yeah, like he's getting, especially since the whole CM Punk stuff, he's getting such popularity. But again, you got to look at what we've currently got and what we can currently see, and that is what it is, man.
Definitely. So let's move on to the C tier now, and you'll see.
Who can we see, Cal?
I don't know, but John Cena's not on there because we can't see him. We're here
stuff.
But yeah, you'll see a lot more names on this, and I think that's probably not a bad thing. I think it's the kind of where the mid card should be, right? I think.
Yeah. I totally agree. You look at we'll go back to WWE just to be sort of consistent, but there are a lot of people here that I've actually rated as being really talented, like the likes of Angel Garza, and even Chad Gable, and they're all people who that's where they currently are, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. These are your lower mid, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Or maybe even your mid, to be honest. And yeah, for me, I think I'm quite happy with, especially with the WWE list. I think some controversial ones, Carl, I don't know if you agree or not, but certainly from my perspective, some people might sort of question the likes of the Street Profits being in there, or even the New Day being in there. But I think this is totally where they are based on their current status. Like, let's face it, the Street Profits were kind of, I'm not saying the Usos have done damage to them, but they took the loss to the Usos. They were fed to the Usos to push the Usos, and the Usos are, for me, in a higher tier at the moment as a tag team. Street Profits, I've no doubt they're going to be one of the big tag teams in WWE, but right now, I think they sit comfortably here.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. To be honest, I don't know whether you had this internal struggle as well, but part of me wanted to actually rate Montez Ford higher than Angelo Dawkins.
I mean, he is sadly, he seems to be the breakout star of their tag team. Although I want their tag team to stay around a lot longer. I can see him getting a solo push and Angelo getting sort of sent to catering. Sadly.
Yeah, which I hope isn't the case. So similar to you, I think Montez Ford is obviously, he's had one or two singles matches now, and he has absolutely shone in their matches. So he's definitely got the capability to step
There's
up
no doubt
that,
he's a talented
that level.
guy, and I can see a solo career for him in the future. But I don't think they let tag teams be tag teams long enough now. Like when Devon and Bubba split up, or when Edge and Christian split up, like it didn't feel like we hadn't had a decent run as a tag team. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I honestly think that the Street Profits might split up before they have another tag belt run. You know what I mean? Which is a shame.
No, definitely.
Because I feel like that's where they're headed now.
Yeah, and I think, obviously we did this. We did actually do this for New Day, so we did put Xavier Woods in the C tier, and I think that's obviously not meant as any disrespect to him or anything like that either. But I think he is the kind of the less prominent one from the New Day, right? I think obviously
he's the for a long time he'd been almost a support actor to them. He was the one playing the trumpet while most of the matches were being held by the other two, and he can go in the ring, and I think he's due for a push in that sense. But I think it is fair that he is a slightly lower than the other two.
Yeah, and I think
you still class the other two as a team.
Well, yeah, there is that. Something else as well where people might be like, "What?" Shayna Basler. So, by all accounts, she could be a B. But the stuff that she's been doing with Nia and things like that has hampered her. I think, there's no denying the fact that she's got the in-ring capability to be higher on this list. I think she still needs to work a lot on her character.
When she first came to the main roster, she was being treated like a fucking star.
Mm-hmm.
She tore through them all in the Elimination Chamber, and you could have argued at that point that she was a B, but sadly they didn't capitalize on it. And like you say, she didn't really have the promo chops to push herself, so she was following the script, and the script did not help her.
No, definitely not. So that's from the kind of WWE side. When we look at AEW, again, there might be a few people in here where people may disagree with us. Obviously, we've got the likes of Powerhouse Hobbs in here, even Preston Vance. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of 10. But I just think, again, for where he is right now, he's not at that B level. I have no doubt he can get there. But it's like that with this whole thing. I feel like I don't want to go through the whole tier list, apologising for where we put people, but
but it is difficult because there's a lot. Like you say, this is where it was almost easier when we were in the lower tiers, because this is where there's a lot of talent, and a lot of people can even pull their favourites out of some of these and go, I absolutely love Sean Spears. Like, I mean, I don't think anyone's ever said that, but you could, and that's the point, right? Sorry, I don't know why I decided to have a shot. But I think this is what makes it more difficult when you get to this sort of tier, because it's not a bad thing being in this tier. It just means that essentially, from what we can see, there's no sign of a world title push or a prominent push in that sense. Do you know what I mean?
No.
But it doesn't mean that they're not integral to the product and talented as fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got people like, another tag team that we've kind of done this to. So Top Flight, you'll notice that Dante Martin's not in this list, but Darius Martin is. Paul White is on here. Now, we're not saying he's not a legend, because he absolutely is. But
definitely.
But
can you give him any more prominence in AEW? Because we're looking at the current product. Like,
exactly.
He's not a wrestler really. Like, part of me thinks he might not even should be on this list, because like he's had that one match with QT, but he's not a wrestler really at the moment.
Well, exactly. So I think you look at his position in the company, there's no other place to put him really. He's very different to the likes of a Sting, who has had fair dues.
The fuck out of us with his ability in the ring at the age of 70 odd.
He's not 70 odd.
Did I get it wrong?
He's not 70 odd. He's just pushing 70. Yes. So that is our kind of C tier. This is where it gets potentially even more interesting. So let's look at the B tier list now. This is, again, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because obviously we're at B tier now. You've then got your A tier, who is obviously like the main events, and then your S tier, who are just the fucking the shiznit. So there'll be people we guarantee on this list that will make people lose their minds. You remember, obviously, Daniel Bryan, when he was in WWE, was always a B+ player. He was never the A, and everyone fucking hated it. So I think we're gonna get a lot of flack for probably the B tier more than any other.
Quite possibly. I'm quite firm on the whole B tier, to be honest with you. Like, first one out of the gate that we'll probably get controversy for is Bayley. But for me, yes, she's one of the 4 horsewomen. I've always found her the weaker component here. Like, she's done fantastic with her heel gimmick, and it's probably the stuff that grew on me over time so much. And I think she did fantastic during the pandemic. And this is no discredit to her. I can't quite put her in that A tier. I think the likes of Charlotte and the likes of Becky and the likes of Sasha, they do go that slight bit. They have that slight edge on her, and I think that's why they are in the no spoilers, but that's why they're in A tier compared to Bayley.
Yeah. No, it's what? It's an excellent point. I think for me, she probably would have been in the C list for me if it wasn't for how good she's done as a heel over the last kind of.
Because she'd have been a bit one note otherwise. So the heel run has definitely excelled her, but I don't know. There's still just something that keeps me from putting her in the A category.
Yeah.
A lot of the B tier, for those watching at home or for those who've watched it on our social medias, make a lot of sense, and you can see why. And that's the likes of Damian Priest, or the likes of Happy Corbin in his current sort of gimmick. Those sort of people where you go, they are either still establishing a new gimmick or they are establishing on the roster. And to be in a B tier at this point is fantastic. And a real testament to them. Like, Damien has done nothing but surprise me since he come to the main roster, because I was not a fan in NXT. And I think he so deserves to be in the B team, as it were. And I can honestly see him maybe going further than that down the line. But current US champion and absolutely killing it. He totally deserves to be where he is right now.
Yeah, another one, Riddle. So I think Riddle's so close to being on the A-list, like 100%. He is literally millimeters away. He's just not there yet. I don't think he's had a long enough run as the US, champ and stuff like that. And I know he's doing a thing with Randy at the minute, but he feels like the supporting character in that, and I feel like that's probably hindered him more than it's helped.
Because he's quite amusing to them. He's playing that comic foil, isn't he? Which is usually the supporting side. But the fact that he is a legit badass and can go in the ring, the future's his. Really, he can definitely hit that upper echelon, as it were.
Yeah, and obviously this is the B tier. What does B stand for? Bearcat.
Keith may have, I don't know, I could be wrong on this, I don't know how you feel. Keith may have stood a chance of being A tier had they not have totally fucked him over, really, coming to the main roster. Because the Limitless one was ace.
Yeah,
his stuff on NXT was ace, and if they'd come in with any level of that, I might have been trying to argue for him to be in the A tier,
Yeah, I think he very much would have been a chance with being in the A tier, and then obviously he had his kind of hiatus and the big break and stuff like that, and then he came back for a bit and didn't really do loads. He obviously lost his return match, and then that was like, okay, yeah, he's definitely in the B tier. When he got called Bearcat, I was almost tempted to put him as a C. I'm not gonna lie. So he's probably shown the biggest range of, he could have been on the A tier, but then he's fucking so close to being on the C tier
on some level,
from how he's been.
And one that I want to mention, just because it kind of still sits a little bit bad with me, but I just can't justify any higher. It's Sheamus, and I feel like Sheamus deserves to be higher because he's put so much time in, and he is such a legend, and he's ace, and his run with Drew McIntyre in their feud was brilliant. But realistically, should he be in the A tier currently? No. And I feel bad saying that because he so should, but based on what we're currently looking at and the current progression, he's not going to be in the world title scene anytime soon. He is useful to have around in the mid card, and that's how they treat him. And he's an absolute fucking legend, and I feel like my gut's telling me to give him a higher rating. But I feel like the B, bear in mind the people who are sat in the B as well. You got the likes of Kofi, you got the likes of John Morrison, you got Nakamura, you got some big names there. It's not a bad thing, but I don't know, my gut seems to always go, well, no, he should be higher, but right now he shouldn't,
I think as well, what's really bizarre, well, it's not even bizarre, but I know these will be some people's favourite wrestlers, right? Bianca Belair, Big E, Bobby Lashley, and Cesaro. Them four names alone are all capable of being A tier, 100%. Big E isn't yet.
Definitely.
I've made no qualms about the fact that he's not ready to be a world champ. Bianca Belair is doing great. She could absolutely be there. Cesaro has had the ball.
Becky Lynch stuff, she might have been there.
Exactly. Cesaro's had the ball and dropped. Well, he doesn't drop it, but he isn't allowed to carry the ball.
They didn't want to do anything with it. I think he had a good run and a good feud with Rollins, and then they were like, "Well, we don't want to do anything else with you now." Where is he now? It's absolutely bizarre the way they treat Cesaro, to be honest.
Yeah, just from a charisma standpoint as well, he needs to work on that character. That's the only thing holding him back, I think.
Definitely. It's not all WWE's booking on him. He does struggle on that charisma and that promo side of it.
Yeah, and Bobby Lashley as well. I just haven't been sold. I just don't think he's just not. He's not A tier for me. He's just not. He's not there. So, talking about AEW then.
Yep.
So obviously you might look at some of the names in here and just think, what are you thinking about? You've got Abaddon in there. Are you saying Abaddon's on the same level as Bayley and Bianca Belair, stuff like that? This is where it becomes important again to say, we're not suggesting if Abaddon went to WWE, she would be anything above a D tier, but probably.
But based on a current sort of position in AEW, she does deserve to be a B.
Yeah, and I think the potential that she has to do something great there as well.
Oddly, she's on the edge of slipping because they're not really using her that much or that well.
No.
But based on the work she's done so far is why I'm sort of giving her a B. And I was almost sorely tempted to put her in the C because after that sounded weird, didn't it? Got in the C now. But I was almost tempted to put her in the C tier because, ever since the whole sort of world title scene and what she had with Cardi Sheeder and stuff, she hasn't really done a lot, and I absolutely love her character, and I think it's refreshing to have a female wrestler with that sort of intimidating, scary character. You don't see that a lot. She almost had a similar air to the likes of like the Fiend or the likes of Undertaker and that sort of thing, and still just as intimidating. Because all due respect to Alexa Bliss, like she went for a similar Fiend type thing, but she wasn't as scary or as intimidating as Bray. She just went for that same sort of creepy sort of aesthetic, I suppose. Whereas Abaddon is like literally fucking terrifying. So
yeah, nightmares.
Like I don't definite potential there. And as I say, I just mentioned that might have been a C. It's just like I hope they start using her again soon, because she so deserves to be in the B. But they just, for me, it's kind of petered out a little bit, and they've not really been using her. Maybe reasons for that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think she's very much at danger of slipping down a tier at the moment. But you look again, it's interesting that we've put Matt Hardy here as well, which obviously is coinciding with Jeff. So it just goes to show, even if you do jump ship to AEW, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better deal for where you'll end up.
I mean, it's kind of Matt's fault though, because big money Matt is in the B tier. I'll say that very clear.
Yeah, I think like Broken Matt could have been higher, absolutely. But you've also
multiverse of Matt could have been higher as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I enjoyed that stuff.
Standing on the shittest one of his personas is ridiculous.
You did, but also that you've got to go on name value as well, which is probably giving them a bit of a bump anyway. But obviously you've got.
I'm just thinking, if there's an opportunity, I'm going to push him in that fucking lake.
But again, with the B tier and AW, you've got a good mix of like some veterans in there as well as some young up and comers. We'll talk about Dante Martin. I've been so impressed with him. He could be huge. Brian Pillman, Griff Garrison, both have been featured quite heavily, especially Pillman of late. The Acclaimed, we were just talking this week about how impressed we've been with them and how well they've been doing. Orange Cassidy, he could potentially move his way into the A tier, but he's at the moment he's close to slipping into the C tier.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think he'll ever do better than B on his current gimmick. And that's not to say I don't love his current gimmick, but it doesn't lend itself to being any more than that for me.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I could see him as a TNT champion or something like that. I think he was having feuds with Jericho and having feuds with Pac and stuff like that, and putting on great matches, but the best friend stuff's holding him back, I think.
Though, like, if you look at his match with Pac, that was brilliant, and I don't even know why, but it was, right? Because he stayed in that character the whole time. But to fully have his feud with Jericho, he had to break away from his character. Mm-hmm. So, like, they'd done the promos where he suddenly started talking because he'd had enough of Jericho, or he suddenly started putting effort into the matches rather than doing the sloth style. And for me, that's a clear sign that he couldn't sustain that. To get to that level, he couldn't sustain that character. And that character's funny as fuck, and I love it. But does he want to consistently be that character and successful as that character on that level, or does he want to get to an A and potentially further his career in that sense? Because there's no guarantee he will. It's just like, that's what for me, you'd have to switch it up and be less the comedic sloth character.
You could potentially give him like a mouthpiece though, so he's still as lazy and whatever. It's more from like a promo set. He only had to kind of do that talking.
Yeah, because the in-ring work can still work, can't it? Because that playing possum thing isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's an interesting style. Yeah. So yeah, you're quite right. Maybe with a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
I mean, because to be honest, I loved it when the best friends were speaking for him, and he said like, you don't want to see him go 1% or whatever it was, because currently he was given 0, and I just fucking loved, like, it was funny, but it fucking worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like I'd say for me, I'd struggle to, I can't envisage him any higher than a B, but I totally agree with you. Like the minute, because he's not really doing anything, you wonder whether he might even slip down a tiers a bit.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So we've got Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page in here. I think if they remain a tag team, they're at risk of dropping down a tier, because I think individually they both got a lot of potential. Scorpio Sky was, proper wowing us, wasn't he? Like last year, the year before.
Yeah. But for Ethan, you might even suggest that sky's the limit.
I like that. But obviously you've got Wardlow, we've got Bags of Potential. We've got a lot of the women in here as well. So Ty Conti, Rio, Ruby Soho, Penelope Ford.
It's funny because I think there's a consistent thing with these women, and they're all women who are talented as fuck, but just need that little bit more. Like Anna Jay, talented as fuck, but she just needs that little bit more sort of work in the ring and on the promo sense. You make the same with Ty Conti. A lot of people have said like she has a lot of martial arts background, but she needs to sort of develop more in a wrestling sense. They're just, and it's only very minor, but very little stuff that they just need to develop ever so slightly. And I think that's fascinating. Like Penelope Ford, we've said, is definitely a future talent. So I find it interesting that the women who are in this tier are just, they're all, for me, near enough all from what I'm looking at, are very close to pushing into that A tier. They just need to refine those skills, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And speaking of the A tier then, so this is where it starts to get a lot more condensed, and especially on the WWE side. So literally, I mean, how many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've only got 12 stars that we are determining as A tier, which is a pretty sorry sight for WWE.
Well, when you consider like the A tier we gave AEW for the slight comparison, and again, we're not saying these people would be A tier in WWE, but for the A tier of AEW, there's 22.
Yeah. And I think as well, something which I noticed on the last one, and maybe it's not as apparent here because there's only like really 2 tag teams in here, but there's tag teams in AEW which are A tier and B tier.
Yeah.
There's hardly even tag teams in WWE, and even when there is, it's like it's either a combination of guys who then being a tag team is holding back their individual success, or they're a tag team and they're just sort of there, and it's like they're C at best.
They like to do that random thing occasionally where they decide if they put 2 A tier people together, it'll make an A tier tag team, which doesn't necessarily work.
No, not at all. But let's start.
I'm going to give Team Hell No the exception to that because that was a fantastic tag team.
That was pretty good. So let's start with WWE then. So obviously we've got AJ Styles. You know, it's a shame he's been put with Omos, because if he would have had another fantastic run in the main event scene, he's probably knocking on the door for S tier. He's an absolute legend. He's been in the business for so long. He is a fucking Hall of Fame caliber guy. So, but yeah, I think he's even at risk of slipping down even further, which is
sadly, yeah. I mean, we needed to give him the A because of the work he's put in and what he could still be, but he's at the risk of going lower because he's still just in this tag team element, which you thought would have changed once they lost the belts, but here we are.
Well, exactly. You've got Alexa Bliss.
Well, I was thinking we might get a bit of grief for the Alexa Bliss one because we've essentially rated it higher than Bayley, and some people might disagree with that. I don't. I personally think, like, from a fully fleshed out character standpoint, I much prefer Alexa. I think Alexa can go in the ring, and she's definitely got the talent on the mic and, like, character-wise. But I think that could potentially be a controversial one. That, like, I think a lot of people would want to put Bayley either on the same level or more, you know?
Yeah. No, definitely. I think... that'll probably cause a lot of controversy. I mean, I won't go through them all one by one because obviously we're going to compare the final rosters at the end. But again, you know, we've got the majority of the 4 horsewomen except for Bayley in here. Rey Mysterio has to be in there just from the fact of, you know,
legend.
He's a legend. It's not quite S tier still, I don't think, especially the stuff he's doing with Dom at the minute, which I get why he's doing it, but it's not helping him. You know, Drew McIntyre absolutely deserves to be in here. Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins as well is incredible. You know, he's been awesome.
And another one that might be slightly controversial, The Miz being in here. But I think he's done nothing but show. Like, I think because we've got to watch him grow as a character as well. Like, he was absolutely awful in the ring, if you recall, and kind of awful on the mic when he first came into it back in Tough Enough days. He's done nothing but improve and improve and improve, and he's like a staple of WWE as far as I'm concerned. So
I mean, he's the only 2-time, you know, bloody whatever you call it,
Grand Slam
champ. So
there you
go.
But let's face it, like he is a WWE guy through and through as well.
Yeah,
like he couldn't be anywhere else. He couldn't be in AEW. He's not that kind of guy. He's a WWE guy, but he definitely at that level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of, I mean, well, actually not a lot, but you know, the ones who are in the A tier, you can clearly see I think the majority of people will think that they deserve to be there. What's so surprising about this and seeing it as a comparative side by side is just how many more A tier talent AEW have than WWE. And again, this isn't us comparing it as like everybody and if they're in the same promotion or anything like that, but just in terms of how they are booked, how they are portrayed, and the importance and weighting they have in AEW.
Yeah. And I'm sure this one would be where a lot of people would want to argue because, like, the first 4 are ex-WWE.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people want to argue that, but that it is what it is. You know, it doesn't matter what company you used to work for. Adam Cole has been booked just through the fucking roof since he came, and he's not even been there that long. Andrade, again, been treated like an absolute fucking star since he's came. Christian has actually, you know, he's beaten the world champion, not for the title, but for the Impact title. Again, given such prominent position and being booked so well for a man who WWE still would not clear to wrestle. It's crazy. Cody, I mean, how can you not, as much as I give Cody shit for loving himself, how can you not make him, put him in the A tier, you know, for AEW? You know, he's been AEW through and through since the start, since its inception. You know, he's the TNT title run in particular, I think, makes him deserve his position here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you've got the likes of Jon Moxley and the former WWE champion as well. He is obviously would have been on the A tier in WWE as well, do you know what I mean? But then you do have people where Miro was never treated as like a tier talent in WWE, but I think, especially as the Redeemer, he's probably leveled himself up to an A tier over the past year. Obviously, you've got the Young Bucks, best tag team in the game. You've got Penta and Rey Fenix, fucking two phenomenal talents.
Honestly, amazing to watch. And they honestly, a couple of months ago, might not have been the A tier, but they've fucking proven themselves through and through,
Yeah, you know, you've got a mix of the up and coming talent as well. You've got, you know, the four pillars. The four pillars are in here, and they are at an A level. They could go down. They could go even. Who knows? In the future, they could go up. But Darby, you know, fucking absolute star. Whether you like him or not, you can't deny he's a star. You've got MJF. You've got Jungle Boy. You've got Sammy Guevara. The four pillars. They've all got a crazy amount of potential, and you know, deserve to be on there. Kenny Omega is on our A tier. Which may prove controversial because the current WWE champion, spoilers of course, is on our S tier. So
yeah, which was again, it was even debated between us, that one. So you know, it's not like it's not a decision we've come to easily.
No.
I want to give it, before we move over to the S tier, I think it's worth mentioning just the sheer amount of talent, of women's talent that we have in AEW in the A tier, with the likes of Britt Baker, Hikaru Shida, Serena Deeb, Thunder Rosa. You know, it's a real testament to, like, you can say what you want about their women's roster, but there's a lot more like top tier, top of the card, really well treated women's talent in AEW, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, and I think this shows it. When you try and rank them like this, you get to see how many you put in that position, and you go, actually, you know what?
Yeah, no, I think it shows how much kind of AEW's come on leaps and bounds in the women's division. Like, we've got 5 of the women in the A tier for WWE. We've got 4 for AEW, but But
there was a time you said the AEW barely had a women's roster.
You wouldn't have any.
Looking at it now,
yeah, and like you look at them as well, and I think you'd be remiss to say they wouldn't do well in WWE. Like Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa, Serena Deeb, Hikaru Shida.
Honestly, they would. Like, they work well anywhere, to be fair to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads us on to, of course, the S tier, and it's 4 apiece. For WWE, we've got Brock Lesnar, Edge, Randy Orton, and Roman Reigns. Whereas for AEW, we have Bryan Danielson, Chris Jericho, CM Punk, and Sting. Now,
I will make a statement that you'd be surprised at, and that is to say that if you were going to compare like for like, and I know we're not trying to do that for the most, and I'm not saying, like, because funnily enough, a lot of the S tier over here would have been S tier in WWE as well, interestingly. Not that we want to do that, but the S tier for WWE, I would say, is probably better.
I think,
and that's no disrespect to the people in the S tier for AEW, but
I think the complete opposite.
Really?
Because, well, I do and I don't, right? So, based on name value, I would say Brock Lesnar is probably the biggest name. But then, if you compare him with Sting, he's also just as big of a name. The difference is...
that's a fair point. It is a fair point.
Edge is a part-timer. Brock Lesnar's fucking even less than a part-timer. He's gone for months and months and months. You've got Randy Orton, who's not even in the main event scene anymore, really. And then you've got Roman Reigns, who's only just about made his way into there. Whereas you've got...
Well, I was still positioned. But one of the criteria I always put for S tier, and I wanted to talk to you about it on the show, so I never mentioned it at the time. The only real reason I was keeping Roman away from the S tier and I was putting him in the A in my mind initially, because spoilers for those who are wondering, that was one of the debates. Is like, Carl, you were quite firm with him on the S tier for what he's done. Is I still think one sort of thing I always have in my mind with people in the S tier is, will they draw without the belt? I think when you hit that point, when you hit that S tier, it doesn't matter whether you're a champion or not. It doesn't matter whether you're the top guy, whether you've got the belt. People are going to turn up for your matches. I always think that is a key element of it. It's like the Undertaker is at a level now where it doesn't fucking matter. If he's in a match, you're going to watch that match. And for me, I was just curious. And I still don't know how I feel about it. And I think an argument could be made for the S tier, but that's the issue I had with Roman. As would you still tune it? Like, if he weren't the head of the table, if he weren't the champion, would he still be that level of a draw?
I think he would if he was still the head of the table. If he didn't have the belt, that's cool. It's that gimmick change he's gone on, which is now...
the character he is,
Yeah, it's now cemented him as the guy. So when he drops that belt, it doesn't matter really, because he's still the guy, you know.
So if he's not got the belt and he rocks up somewhere and has a match with any guy, as even a young talent he wants to push, you're tuning in for that match.
Yeah,
because that's one of the reasons. Again, hopefully you don't mind me saying, Carl, but I think we were debating Sting on the AEW side of things, and that is one of the reasons I put Sting personally in the S tier. Is that it doesn't matter what match Sting's in, I'm watching that match.
Yeah,
and the fact that he may have gone lower, except for the fact that he's surprised the fuck out of me with how well he's doing in the ring at his age.
It's insane.
I'm definitely gonna fucking watch that.
Yeah. It's like he hasn't lost a step at all, isn't it? But
it's
what I think is like almost heartbreaking, looking at all this, is if you think of the likes of John Cena, The Undertaker, Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold, whatever, like the amount of people who should be in this list, and they're just not anymore. They've retired. They don't wrestle. They're not there. And then you look at the lack of new talent that's come up into that A tier list.
Yeah,
that is my biggest heartbreaking moment for WWE, and it just shows the lack of creating stars.
Do you know what? This is not a slight at AEW when I say it, but the ironic thing is, you look at the S tier. Just look at the S tier for AEW, and I'm not having a go at AEW, but CM Punk and Bryan Danielson weren't even there a couple of months ago.
No.
Right? And the rest here, because they've been treated how they should be treated. These are people that WWE could have really tried their fucking hardest to keep because they were S tier. And obviously and it's not to start going into let's bash WWE, but I think it's funny that like these guys, they were a big deal in WWE as well, but it is what it is. They haven't kept them. And like in some ways you could argue, because I don't know, I maybe not say this. I was going to say in some ways you could argue that they do know how to make stars, but they didn't make CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. They built them. They built on their foundation, I suppose. So they still made them the biggest star they were. But I just think it's funny that if we'd done this tier list a couple of months ago, they'd have beat AEW outright. They wouldn't have had as many S tiers.
Oh God, no, they wouldn't. And I think, but I'll move to the final kind of image, which is it basically compares the S and A tier for WWE versus that of AEW, and you look at it as a side by side like that, and it's quite a scary visual. To be fair, it highlights a number of things for me, and it's simply that there's no tag teams whatsoever in the WWE one, whereas you've got at least two in the AEW one.
Well, the two that stick out straight away are the Lucha Bros and the other guys.
Young Bucks.
Well, I'm going to remind myself through the art, the Young Bucks. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm quietly confident as well, the likes of Santana and Ortiz, when they build up a bit more, they will end up in the A tier as well, because they're both talented as fuck. They just haven't had that run yet,
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I think when you look at, obviously, I don't think Edge is going to be around for too much longer. We don't know what's happening with AJ Styles. Randy Orton ain't no spring chicken anymore. Brock's going to be gone.
He needs to go back to the woods and chop wood and stuff.
Rey Mysterio. he's not going to be there for too much longer either. And it's kind of...
he's only got one eye now and everything, so yeah, he definitely needs to retire at some point.
And you look at it and it's like, wow, that is sparse. And you look, and I think this is the problem they've had. If you look at the people we ranked in the B tier, it's the people they've now kind of tried over the last kind of months to go, well, we'll make them this, we'll put it on Big E, or we'll put it on Bobby Lashley.
Yeah.
And they don't feel A tier.
No, and they need to put some work in to get them there.
Yeah.
But it's funny that because like you mentioned about the amount of people who are probably going to retire soon or not be in the company soon, and it's something that AEW have had a lot of grief for, saying like, oh, you're taking on old talent from WWE. But if you look at the way we've ranked this, even if you took out the likes of, let's quickly look through it, you took out the likes of Christian and hang on. So even if you took out Christian, the 80 is still solid as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, it's not because the Christian, to be honest, you could look at Christian, Chris Jericho, and Sting and go, well, those three aren't going to be around forever. They're going to want to sort of take a back step and so on like that. Billy Gunn's in the C tier, and again, he's no spring chicken. So there's a few there you could pull out, but even when you take them out, they're not affecting the A tier.
No. I'd love to do like a mean age between, and see like how old they are.
Right?
Because you've got to look at everybody in that WWE. They've got to be they don't have too much longer left.
But even Bobby Lashley surprised me. He's in his 40s. I didn't even know.
Yeah, which I mean, for wrestlers, they tend to go on into their kind of mid to late 40s anyway. For whatever reason,
this is the weird thing that I think people struggle with this with wrestling because it is a sport. It's sports entertainment, so you still have that sports element to it, and people always go, well, sports stars, they retire early, they don't last long. But it's sports entertainment, so you can still be in the business and not do what you were doing when you first started. It's not like playing football. It's like when you can't play football, you can't play football. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can still be on screen, they can still take bumps and so on like that. They can ease off the pedal so they can last longer. But it feels weird having in a way when you can go, well, they're late 40s and they're still wrestling. God. But it's different. It's different, isn't it? It's a different kind of way of doing it.
Yeah, no, it really is. But I think if you look at you look at your likes of your Darby, your Jungle Boy, your Sammy Guevara, Hangman Page, Britt Baker, MJF. These are all people who could go on to be huge stars, and they've already been booked high up the card in that way. So the longevity for AEW seems to be a really important factor. Whereas for WWE, that's where you've got to, if you look at they've come out now and said, oh, well, our new strategy is going to be, we're going to get some young, built like brick shit house kind of people that we can mold in our style for the future, because they haven't got it. Yeah.
And at least they appear to be acknowledging that, because what they're trying to do with NXT is build that up, isn't it? So hopefully that is a bit of a course correction, and they are going to start trying to build some stars up and fully being aware of what the thing is.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if you want to do this, but a fun game we might be able to play at some point, right, is name those wrestlers, right, where we each have to name as many stars in AEW or as many stars in WWE as we can, because I think you'd be surprised how many memorable names AEW has now as well.
Mm.
I think you could probably name more of their roster than you could of WWE's at present.
It's a really good point, to be fair. I remember seeing after they released that graphic which we put up at the start of This Week in Wrestling, and it was just a list of names who were on each show. And I on some of them I was like, who the fuck is that guy? I had no idea. So yeah.
And the thing is, and this is what I'm saying, we're not bashing WWE, because they've always had peaks and troughs, and I think right now they're looking at the product and they are making some changes. Look at the heavy changes they made to NXT. NXT is their developmental, whether you want to believe it or not, and that's where their stars are coming from. You can see from the draft that they pilfered a few, so that's exactly what the design is. And they're now looking at it and going, right, well, we need to start building some guys up, and then you get the likes of Braun Breaker and Parker Boudreaux and stuff like that, and you go, well, they're trying to build them up to something, and they know what they're doing, and that's a good thing. It's just looking at what we currently have, and you go, yeah, they need to do that. They really need to do that. So we're not knocking them. It's just it's interesting seeing what it is and what it needs to be, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's ever going to get to a point where we're like, okay, WWE are screwed because they haven't made any new stars. But I think it just goes to show how long it's been since they have. So I think to your point, they seem more kind of self-aware that they need to now, and it looks like they're going down that route.
Like an interesting approach that you don't see with WWE as often was like they're making a massive deal of Gabe Stevenson, and it's like we don't really know anything of him yet. Interestingly. But
it's a scary one, though.
I've not seen them do that in a while because they're like, this guy's going to be great. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, they're hyping him up like he's going to be... He has to live up to that. And I hope he does. But they're hyping him up like he's a big deal, which I've not seen him do in a while.
I will always compare, obviously, him to Kurt Angle and how they did that.
Naturally.
And
so far, he hasn't won his medals with a broken freaking neck. So.
Well, the big difference is that when Kurt Angle signed with WWE, no fucking knew about it because he was there learning how to wrestle, doing his basic, getting everything sorted, and then they went, okay, we've got this gold medalist, Kurt Angle. And everyone's like, oh shit, yeah. But now they've just gone, well, we signed this Gabe Stevenson guy, and he's hot on, let's fucking get him down people's throats now, so everyone knows we've got an Olympic guy. He's not ready. He hasn't done any wrestling training. So what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? Like what? You're just going to put him out there and say, go ahead, kid. Like. So yeah, he's got a lot of. I don't think anyone thought Kurt Angle was going to be the absolute charisma fucking dynamo that he was. He was one of the best in the business.
He was definitely like a perfect storm, wasn't he? Like no, I don't think anyone expected him to have. I never expected him to be comedic. And if you look at when he first came in, he wasn't really there to be that. But his comic timing's just fantastic.
Yeah. So it's one of them.
Some of my favorite humorous moments from the reality era, from like our teen years, with like him having his rap battles, or the whole milk truck thing, or the little cowboy hat with Austin and stuff like that. It's like all that was just like that was sold because of him.
Oh, like, it really was. Yeah.
Let's not get into another why we love Kurt.
I could do many volumes or many editions of that, but yeah, I just think this exercise that we did comparing those tier lists, and I know there'll be a lot of people out there, and again, we're not going anti-WWE and pro AEW, whatever, because you look at some of the names in this WWE thing, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. If you were to do that comparative of if they were in the same company, whatever, arguably you could go, well, okay, maybe more of the WWE ones would be rising to the top in terms of their overall or whatever like that. But I think this has highlighted to me that AEW now has got such a well-blended mix in their roster of S tier, A tier, which includes a lot of younger guys and a lot of people on that B level who are so close to breaking in as well. Whereas for WWE, it doesn't seem to be that way. They've got S tier guys who are very close to being retired or part-time and even more. You've got a very lackluster A tier who, are already quite old and aging, and how much longer have they got? And then your B tier guys just don't seem to do it, which is why they're B tier. And they're trying with them. They've put it on Big E. They've put it on Bobby Lashley. Bianca Belair's getting that push.
If you look at a lot of your C tier, none of those C's you can see really moving over to the B's.
No.
Like, some of them, don't be wrong, the likes of Angel Garza, so it's got tons of potential. Like you said, Montez, probably not Angelo, could move up. But when you're looking at ones like we've got the likes of Chad Gable or Drake Maverick or Drew Gulak, they're probably going to stay in the C's if we're honest. So that they have that kind of problem as well. But again, we're deliberately not including NXT, but NXT could be a massive factor for how their future looks and what this does. It'd be interesting to do this again next year.
Absolutely. I mean, the people you name like Bron Breakker and Parker Boudreaux and stuff like that, they could go on to be huge. Dexter Lumis, if they actually pulled the trigger, could go on to be huge for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think we're even even if we included the likes of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa in this, they wouldn't be high on the tier list in WWE.
No.
So
no.
But yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of potential in NXT potentially. There's potential in NXT potentially.
Definitely.
But yeah, thank you for tuning in to the A2theK Wrestling Show for our roster review, WWE versus AEW. Difficult one. I'm sure we caused a lot of controversy. Let us know, who did you disagree with? Are you the world's biggest Big E fan? Is he S tier to you? Someone said, how could we put Fuego del Sol as a D tier when he's clearly S tier. He's got a dangerous tornado DDT. But yeah, let us know, who would you have changed? Have we ranked someone too high, too low? Do you want to fight the corner for WWE and why they have created new stars, or do you want to go against it? AEW of them not creating original new stars and bringing over ex-WWE. Let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it. We love to consider other perspectives. That's the thing. As long as you're not being a dick about it.
Well, exactly. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias. TikTok famous we are. You want to see a couple of face morphs, probably some new content on there from us just directly eventually. And
one of these days.
Yeah, and obviously if you're watching this, make sure you listen to it when you're commuting in your car or out and about, or if you're listening to this now and you find yourself at home with all the channels and nothing to watch, come and look at our ugly faces and you can see the visuals like in segments like this where you can see those tier lists side by side. But it's been real, guys. It's been good as always. We'll be back probably this time next week. I'd like to say it's earlier, but it's us, and we don't play by the rules. But yeah, until next time, guys, all the best. Take care, and here is the wonderful Georgia Smith to say goodbye.
Hey guys, it's Georgia Smith here, and you've heard me on A2theK. These guys are awesome. Check it out. A2theK.
A2theK.